Saryn, the Mistress of Maladies, just had a rework happen that has significantly changed the way she is played. Gone now are the days of just spamming her abilities over and over. When Saryn first came out, her 4th ability, Miasma, was the popular spam as a way to nuke whole rooms. After her first rework, Spore became the main spam ability, infecting whole rooms for massive damage. So in the tradition of changing things up when things are too OP or create a boring way to play, Digital Extremes did a revisit to Saryn. If you're not familiar with Saryn, I suggest watching my previous video for her first so you can get a grasp on how she worked before and will better understand the changes. Saryn's first ability, Spores, is probably the most changed aspect of this revisit. Many players, myself included, adjusted to the spamming approach of Spores. However, that does create a boring way to play this game, so the spamming of Spores is now gone. Instead, Spores now have infinite duration as long as at least one enemy is infected. Spores also now inflict corrosive damage, whereas before they inflicted viral damage. That means you will have plenty of armor stripping. As before, shooting a spore will pop it and cause new spores to spread to enemies within 16 meters. But if an infected enemy dies, the spores will spread for only half that distance. The biggest element of the revisit is that spores now have infinite damage scaling. When you first cast spores, you will find a damage counter appear in the lower right corner of your screen, similar to the way we have a counter for Nidus. This counter will show you how much damage each spore does per tick, as well as how many enemies are currently infected. For each spore active on an enemy, this damage counter will increase every tick. That means the more spores you have active, the faster the damage per tick increases for each spore. Recasting spores while already active will burst all spores, causing 200% of the damage counter per spore. Her second ability, Molt, no longer serves as a target for spores. Molt now functions simply as a decoy like originally intended, but upon cast will also provide a speed boost. Functioning similar to Snow Globe and Iron Skin, the Molt will be invulnerable for 3 seconds, during which time all absorbed damage will be added to its health pool. Toxic Lash is probably the second most significant change of the revisit. First off, Toxic Lash now applies to all weapons, meaning you are no longer restricted to just melee weapons. Toxic Lash will still deal toxin damage, but this damage is doubled now for melee attacks. Miasma has had a slight change from the revisit, but not by much. Miasma's damage type has been switched from corrosive to viral, and has been increased from 350 to 500. Miasma also has a 100% status proc for viral when cast, and duration has been increased to 3 seconds. It will also deal double damage to targets affected by spores. Just a couple months before this rework, I decided to switch things up and try a build aimed at minimal casting of spores with higher damage and range. So other than remembering that you can no longer spam spores, it has not been difficult for me to adjust to these changes. There are still some buggy elements with her changes, however, so I expect her to get some more adjustments soon. For now, I have come up with a new, balanced style build aimed at maximizing spores and miasma. The interesting thing I've found by playing Saryn following these changes is that Spores is more fitting now as her ultimate ability than Miasma. Against lower level enemies, I found Miasma to be the quicker way to clear rooms, as many times I saw my Spores kill all the enemies, dropping my damage counter and causing a fresh cast of Spores to be required. Miasma, however, had no problem letting me clear a large area and keep moving. Against higher level enemies is where Spores really starts to shine. High level enemies will survive the damage from Spores longer, allowing for better spread and of course a higher damage counter. I'm not saying this is the best way to play Saryn by any means. I'm sure we will soon be seeing speed builds for taking advantage of Molt's new improvements, and of course melee focused builds to better take advantage of Toxic Lash. And as usual, there are of course people crying that Saryn is ruined and she's no fun anymore. In my opinion, I have found her more enjoyable now, since it is no longer about just spamming Spores constantly. I can definitely tell you that the changes to Spores has made Saryn much more powerful than she used to be. In the end, play Saryn in whatever way you enjoy. Just make sure you know how her abilities work so you can get the most out of her. Well, that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button, leave me a comment below, and hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'm your host, Mr. Spicy, as always. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to keep it spicy this week, and I will see you in the next video.